she filled in as a hotel receptionist, unaware she'd check in a millionaire who'd change her life forever. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the story. After Claire checked in Blake Harrison, she tried to shake off the unusual feeling that lingered in the air. He was just another guest, right? A regular businessman who happened to stay at the hotel. Yet, as she glanced at him walking toward the elevator with his long stride and commanding presence, she couldn't help but feel like there was something more to him, something she couldn't put her finger on. It was just another day at the Grandview Hotel, but for Claire, it felt different. She pushed the thought to the back of her mind, focusing on the tasks ahead. But Blake Harrison was hard to forget. A few hours later, the phone at the front desk rang, and Claire picked it up, her voice steady but curious. Grandview Hotel, how may I assist you? Miss Simmons, a deep voice said on the other end. Blake Harrison here. I hope I'm not disturbing you, but I realized I forgot to ask about the hotel amenities. Would you be so kind as to help me with that? Claire's heart skipped a beat. She had to remind herself that she was just doing her job, nothing more. Of course, Mr. Harrison. We offer a full range of services, including a 24-hour fitness center, room service, and our renowned rooftop restaurant. Is there anything specific you're looking for? Actually, I was wondering about a recommendation for a quiet place to dine, he replied smoothly. Somewhere private, away from the usual bustle of the restaurant. Claire thought for a moment. We have a private dining area near the top floor, perfect for business meetings or a more intimate dining experience. Would you like me to arrange a reservation there for you? That sounds perfect. Please reserve a table for two. And, Claire, I would appreciate it if you could join me for dinner tonight. There was a pause on the line, and Claire wasn't sure if she had heard him right. Join you, she asked, her voice betraying a hint of confusion. Yes, Blake replied, his voice calm but unmistakably confident. I thought it would be more interesting to have dinner with someone who knows this hotel well. What do you say? Claire hesitated. She wasn't sure if she was supposed to accept or if this was just part of his business persona. But then she remembered the stress of her family's situation, the mounting bills, and her endless struggle to make ends meet. Could this be a chance to step into a world she could never have imagined? Claire took a deep breath. I'll be there, she said, before hanging up the phone. She tried to stay calm as she gathered her thoughts. Blake Harrison was a man of power and influence, a man whose world was far beyond anything she had ever known. But in that moment, something told her that this dinner could change everything. As the evening approached, Claire couldn't shake off the feeling that tonight was going to be different. She changed into her best outfit, one she had saved for special occasions, and made her way to the top floor of the hotel. As she walked through the sleek, dimly lit hallway leading to the private dining area, she could hear the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of fine china from behind the closed doors. Blake was already seated at the table when she arrived. He stood up as she entered, his smile warm and welcoming. Claire, you look stunning, he said, pulling out the chair for her. Claire couldn't help but feel a little flustered. She wasn't used to compliments, especially from someone like Blake. She sat down, trying to remain composed. Thank you, she said softly. Blake studied her for a moment, as if evaluating her every move. I must admit, I don't often invite hotel staff to join me for dinner. But something about you intrigued me. How long have you been working here, Claire? A few months, she replied. I'm still getting used to the routine, but I love it. The Grandview is a beautiful place to work. Blake nodded thoughtfully. I've heard nothing but good things about this hotel. But I also know that behind every successful business, there are people who work tirelessly to make it happen. People like you. His words, though flattering, made Claire uneasy. She wasn't sure if he was just being polite or if there was something deeper beneath his words. But before she could say anything, the waiter arrived to take their order, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. As they dined, Claire found herself talking more freely than she had expected. She told Blake about her family, the challenges she had faced in her personal life, and how she had ended up working at the hotel. Blake listened intently, his gaze never leaving her face. There was a depth to his eyes, an understanding that made her feel as though he truly cared. By the time the meal came to an end, Claire was no longer the nervous receptionist from earlier. She had enjoyed the evening more than she had anticipated. Blake stood up first, offering her his arm. "I'd love to show you the view from the rooftop," he said. Claire hesitated for a moment before nodding. "I'd like that." As they stepped onto the rooftop, the city spread out before them, its lights twinkling like stars in the night sky. Blake turned to her, his expression serious. "Claire, I hope this isn't too forward, but I've been thinking about how much potential you have. I'm always looking for smart, capable people to work with. How would you like to join my team?" Claire blinked, surprised by the sudden offer. "Your team?" "Yes," Blake said, his tone confident. "I run a business empire, and I could use someone like you. Someone with your work ethic and intelligence." Claire felt a rush of emotions. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for, the chance to finally step out of her struggles and into a world of possibilities. But as she looked at Blake, she couldn't help but wonder if there was more to this than just a job offer. What did he really want from her? As the days passed, Claire couldn't stop thinking about the dinner with Blake Harrison. The view from the rooftop had been breathtaking, and his words about potential and joining his team lingered in her mind. She had always dreamed of a way out of her financial struggles, a way to secure a better future for her family, but the idea of working with someone like Blake, someone so powerful and successful, felt surreal. Was it possible that someone like her, a small-town girl with big dreams, could really be a part of his world? Blake had offered her a glimpse of a life she had only ever imagined in her most hopeful moments. And while part of her wanted to jump at the opportunity, another part of her hesitated. Was there something more to his offer than just a professional opportunity? That night, as Claire lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she tried to push those thoughts away. She had a decision to make. The next day, Blake called her again, this time to invite her to meet with him at his office. Claire agreed, feeling both excited and anxious. She had no idea what to expect, but she was determined to make the right choice. When she arrived at the towering glass building where Blake's company was headquartered, she was in awe. The lobby was sleek, with marble floors and walls lined with contemporary art. She could tell that this was a place where the elite did business, a world she had never stepped into before. Blake was already waiting for her in his office. He stood up as she entered, his face lighting up with a smile that made her heart flutter. "Claire, I'm glad you came," he said, motioning for her to sit down. "I've been thinking about our conversation, and I want to make sure you have all the information you need before making a decision." Claire took a seat, her nerves palpable, but she tried to stay composed. Blake poured them both a glass of water before continuing. "This is a big step, Claire. I don't want you to feel pressured. I know you've been through a lot, and I admire your determination. I think you could be a valuable asset to my team." As he spoke, Claire noticed how his confidence seemed to fill the room, how his words were measured and deliberate. It was clear that Blake Harrison wasn't the type to rush into anything without careful thought. "But I also know that this kind of opportunity doesn't come without sacrifices," he continued, leaning forward slightly. "You'll have to make choices, and you may face challenges that you've never encountered before. This isn't just about a job, it's about a partnership. And I need someone who can handle everything that comes with it." Claire listened intently, feeling the weight of his words. She had worked hard her entire life, juggling multiple jobs and trying to keep her family afloat. But could she really step into this new world, one where business deals, power, and wealth played such a central role? "I understand," Claire replied, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "I just want to make sure I'm making the right choice, not just for me, but for my family as well." Blake nodded, his expression softening. Of course. You don't have to make any decisions right away. Take your time and think about it. I'm not here to rush you into anything. He paused before adding, but know that this opportunity, this partnership, could change everything for you. And I'd be happy to help you along the way. For the next few days, Claire wrestled with the decision. She kept coming back to Blake's words, this could change everything for you. Was she ready for that kind of change? The kind that would take her out of her comfort zone and into a world she didn't fully understand. At night, she would talk to her mother, who had always been her biggest supporter. What do you think, Mom? Claire would ask, her voice filled with doubt. I think you've worked so hard to get here, her mother would reply, her voice soft but confident. You deserve a chance to make a better life for yourself. But remember, it's not just about money or success. It's about being happy with the choices you make. Claire knew her mother was right. Happiness had always been her guiding light, and now, for the first time in a long while, Claire saw a path that might lead her toward something more. She made up her mind. The following week, she met Blake once again at his office. This time, she felt more confident, more sure of herself. Blake greeted her with the same warm smile. Ready to talk business, he asked, his tone playful. Claire nodded. Yes, I am. Blake leaned forward, his eyes intense. I'm glad to hear that, he said. Let's get started. As Claire and Blake discussed the details of the partnership, she realized something. This wasn't just about a job offer, this was about a chance to change her life, to take control of her future. And for the first time in years, Claire felt like she had the opportunity to do something for herself, something that could lead to a brighter tomorrow. Little did she know, this partnership with Blake Harrison would soon become more than just business. It would lead her down a path she had never expected, one that would test her, challenge her, and ultimately change everything she knew about love, trust, and success. As Claire settled into her new role with Blake's company, she found herself constantly on edge. The world she had stepped into was so different from the one she had known. Her days at the hotel felt like a distant memory, and now, she was working alongside some of the brightest minds in the business world. Blake's presence loomed large, both in the office and in her life. He was everywhere, constantly involved in every decision, always pushing for more. But with each passing day, Claire found herself getting more comfortable with the work. She was becoming an integral part of the team, her contributions earning her respect and recognition. Blake's leadership style was firm, but there was an undeniable warmth to him when he spoke to her. It was as if he saw something in her that no one else had noticed before. There were moments when their eyes would meet across the office, and Claire could feel the weight of his gaze, a mix of admiration and something deeper. Yet, despite the connection they shared, Claire still felt uncertain about where this path was leading. Was it just business, or was there something more? One afternoon, as Claire was working late in the office, Blake approached her desk. I need your help with something, he said, his voice soft but urgent. Claire looked up from her computer screen, startled by his sudden appearance. Of course, she replied, trying to hide the nervousness in her voice. Blake smiled, a warm, almost mischievous smile that made her heart skip a beat. I need you to accompany me to an important meeting tomorrow. It's with a potential investor, and I think your insights could be invaluable. Claire nodded, not fully understanding why he would want her there, but trusting his judgment. The next day, she found herself sitting in a high-end restaurant, facing a group of investors who were eager to hear Blake's pitch. As the meeting unfolded, Claire was amazed at Blake's confidence and ability to command the room. He was a master of persuasion, effortlessly convincing the investors of the potential in his company. But as he spoke, Claire couldn't help but notice the way he looked at her. Every so often, his gaze would flicker to her, and she felt a shiver run down her spine. It was as if there was a silent understanding between them, one that went beyond the professional. After the meeting, Blake suggested they grab a drink to celebrate the successful pitch. They walked to a nearby bar, the evening air cool against Claire's skin. As they sat down, Blake ordered them both a glass of wine. You did well today, he said, raising his glass. Claire smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. Thank you. It was a little intimidating at first, but once I saw how you handled everything, it was easier to follow your lead. Blake's smile widened, and for a moment, Claire thought she saw something in his eyes, something more than just gratitude. You're learning quickly. That's one of the reasons I brought you here. I see a lot of potential in you, Claire. Her heart raced as she looked into his eyes. The words felt heavier than they should have, and Claire wondered if he meant more than just her professional potential. Blake, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, this whole world is so new to me. I'm just trying to keep up. Blake leaned forward, his hand gently resting on hers. You're doing more than keeping up. You're thriving. Claire looked down at their hands, her pulse quickening at the intimacy of the moment. There was something about the way Blake looked at her, the way he made her feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced before. She felt a wave of warmth spread through her, but also a pang of uncertainty. Was this professional admiration, or was there something deeper brewing between them? The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Blake continued to praise her work, and Claire found herself opening up to him more than she ever had with anyone before. She shared her struggles, her fears about the future, and the weight she had always carried to take care of her family. Blake listened attentively, his eyes never leaving hers. It was in that moment that Claire realized just how much she had come to depend on him. Not just for the job, but for something more. When the evening ended, Blake walked her to her car. Before she got in, he turned to her with a serious expression. Claire, he said softly, I want you to know that I'm here for you, not just as your boss, but as someone who genuinely cares about you. Whatever you need, I'll help. Claire was taken aback by the sincerity in his voice. She had always seen Blake as a mentor, someone who could offer her a way out of her struggles, but now, it felt like there was something else. Something unspoken that hung between them. As she drove home that night, Claire's mind raced. She knew that working with Blake had already changed her life, but what did it mean for her personal life? Was she falling for him, or was this just a natural result of being so close to someone so powerful and charismatic? And if it was more than just admiration, what would that mean for her future? She wasn't sure, but one thing was clear, her life was no longer just about survival. It was about something more, something that could change everything she thought she knew about love, trust, and ambition. The days that followed Blake's words on that quiet evening started to blur together for Claire. She found herself constantly thinking about him, about the way he had looked at her, his touch on her hand, and the things he had said. It was more than just the professional connection they shared, it was something deeper, something that began to tug at her heartstrings. But with every passing day, Claire's doubts also grew. She was unsure about where all this was leading, unsure whether Blake's feelings for her were truly as genuine as they seemed. Was he simply being kind to a young, ambitious woman, or was there something more to his actions? Despite her internal struggle, Claire couldn't deny that the bond between them was growing stronger. They began spending more time together, not just in the office, but outside as well. Blake would call her late at night to discuss work, but their conversations often drifted to more personal topics. He asked her about her dreams, her family, and what she hoped to achieve. And with every conversation, Claire found herself opening up to him in ways she never had before. One evening, after a long day at work, Blake invited her to a gala at one of the city's most prestigious venues. It's an important event, he told her over the phone. I'd like you to attend with me. It's a great opportunity to network, and I think you'd enjoy it. Claire hesitated. She had never attended such an exclusive event before. Are you sure? I'm not exactly the type of person who fits in at those kinds of things. Blake's voice was warm and reassuring. Trust me, Claire. You belong there just as much as anyone else. It will be a great chance for you to get to know more people in the business world. And I'd like your company. His words settled in her chest, and she found herself agreeing to go. The night of the gala, Claire stood before the mirror, unsure of herself as she adjusted her dress. It was elegant but simple, perfect for the event, though she couldn't help but feel like she didn't quite belong. She had always been the girl who worked hard, who didn't have time for parties or luxury. But tonight, she was stepping into a world that was foreign to her. When she arrived at the venue, Blake was already waiting for her. He greeted her with a smile that made her heart race, and she couldn't help but notice how handsome he looked in his black tuxedo. He offered her his arm as they walked inside together. "You look stunning, Claire," he said softly. "You have a way of making everything seem brighter." She blushed, trying to keep her composure. "Thank you. This is all a bit overwhelming for me." Blake chuckled. "You'll get used to it. You're doing just fine." As the night wore on, Claire found herself in awe of the people around her. Business leaders, politicians, and celebrities all mingled effortlessly, discussing deals and making connections. But despite the grandeur of the event, Claire's attention was mostly focused on Blake. He was a natural in this environment, exuding confidence and charm, but there was something different about the way he treated her. He made her feel like she was the only person in the room, like she mattered. As they shared a quiet moment on the balcony, away from the noise of the party, Blake turned to her with a serious expression. "Claire, I want to be upfront with you," he said, his voice low. "I value you, not just for your work, but for who you are. You're smart, driven, and kind. I see a future with you, one that goes beyond just business." Claire's heart skipped a beat at his words. She had always admired Blake, respected him for his vision and leadership, but now she was beginning to understand that there was something more to their connection. "Blake, she started, unsure of how to express the mix of emotion swirling inside her. "I don't know what to say." Blake reached out and gently took her hand in his. "You don't have to say anything. I just want you to know that I'm here, Claire. I want to see where this can go, if you're willing to take that step with me." His words left her speechless. Could she really take that step? Could she allow herself to fall for the man who had given her a chance at a better life, a man who was more than just her boss? Claire's thoughts raced as she looked into his eyes. She had always dreamed of something more, of a life that was different from the one she had known. But was she ready for the kind of love that Blake was offering? Before she could answer, a voice interrupted them, pulling them back to the noise of the party. Blake gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "Think about it, Claire. You don't have to decide tonight. But know that I care about you, more than just as an employee." Claire nodded, her mind still reeling. She had never imagined herself in this kind of situation, but now that she was here, she wasn't sure what to do. She had been given a chance at a new life, but with it came new questions, new challenges, and a new kind of risk. As the night came to an end, Claire left the gala with a sense of uncertainty hanging in the air. She had never felt more alive, but she also felt more vulnerable than ever before. Was she ready to let Blake into her heart, or would the walls she had spent years building be too high to tear down? The days after the gala felt like a whirlwind for Claire. She had never imagined herself in this world, surrounded by luxury, elegance, and the constant buzz of important people. Blake's words from that night kept echoing in her mind. "I want to see where this can go." She wasn't sure if he meant their relationship, her career, or both. But one thing was clear, Blake had a way of making her feel seen, important, and powerful in a way she had never experienced. At work, things were moving fast. Claire had settled into her role, earning respect from her colleagues and becoming an integral part of the team. Her confidence was growing with every meeting, every successful deal, and every new task Blake entrusted her with. But despite her growing professional success, her personal life remained uncertain. She found herself thinking more and more about Blake, about the chemistry between them, the way he made her feel. But there were still so many questions. Was this just a professional connection, or was Blake truly interested in her beyond the office? Was she ready to open herself up to someone like him, someone whose life was so different from hers? As the weeks went by, Claire tried to focus on her work, but it was hard to ignore the tension that had been building between her and Blake. They would often share quiet moments at the office, exchanging glances that said more than words ever could. But when it came to addressing their feelings, neither of them seemed willing to take the first step. One afternoon, after a particularly long meeting with a group of investors, Blake asked Claire to stay behind. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" he asked, his voice low. Claire nodded, her heart beating faster as she followed him to his office. When the door closed behind them, Blake turned to her, his expression serious. "Claire, I've been thinking a lot about us," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Claire's heart skipped a beat. Was this the moment? Was he finally going to say what they both had been avoiding? "I know this isn't easy," Blake continued, taking a deep breath. "I know we've been working together, and things are moving fast, but I want you to know that I care about you. Not just as an employee, but as someone I've come to respect, and something more." Claire's breath caught in her throat. Was this really happening? Was Blake telling her how he felt? "Blake," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I care about you too. But I'm just not sure what to do. I've never been in a situation like this before, and I don't want to complicate things." Blake stepped closer, his hand gently resting on her arm. "I understand. But I can't ignore how I feel. And I don't want to pretend that what we have is just about work." His words hung in the air, the weight of them settling over Claire. She felt a mix of excitement and fear, torn between the life she had always known and the possibility of something more with Blake. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "I'm scared, Blake. I'm scared of letting someone in, of letting myself fall for you. My whole life has been about taking care of my family, about doing what's necessary to survive. I've never let myself dream about something like this before." Blake reached out, his fingers brushing against hers. "I understand, Claire. And I'm not asking you to give up your dreams or your responsibilities. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I'm willing to take this slow. I'm willing to be patient, if that's what it takes." Claire looked up at him, her heart racing. She had always been the one to push her feelings aside, to keep her emotions locked away for the sake of practicality. But in this moment, standing in Blake's office, she realized that maybe it was time to let herself feel. Maybe it was time to take a chance. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's take it slow. But I need time to figure this out. I don't want to rush into anything, but I also don't want to keep pretending that nothing is happening between us." Blake smiled, a soft, understanding smile that made Claire's heart flutter. "Take all the time you need, Claire. I'm not going anywhere." For the first time in weeks, Claire felt a sense of relief wash over her. It was as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She didn't have to have all the answers right now. She didn't have to figure everything out in one moment. All she had to do was take the next step. And for once, she didn't feel alone in the journey. As Claire left Blake's office that evening, she felt lighter, like she had finally let herself breathe. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, that things wouldn't always be easy. But for the first time, she felt like she was moving toward something that was worth the risk. Her heart was still uncertain, but there was a part of her that was ready to let go of the fear and embrace the unknown. She had taken the first step, and for now, that was enough. The weeks that followed the conversation in Blake's office were filled with a mix of emotions for Claire. She had agreed to take things slow, to allow herself time to figure out what she really wanted, but the tension between them continued to grow. Every glance, every smile, seemed to carry an unspoken promise, and Claire found herself constantly questioning whether she was ready to take that leap. Blake, for his part, was patient. He respected her space, giving her the time she needed without pushing too hard. But that didn't stop the way he looked at her, the way his presence made her feel like she was the only one in the room. At work, Claire's role had expanded, and she was now overseeing several key projects. She had earned the trust of Blake and the team, and her confidence continued to grow. But with her rising professional status, her personal life seemed to remain in a constant state of uncertainty. She was still unsure about how to navigate her growing feelings for Blake and what it would mean for their professional relationship. One evening, after a particularly long day at the office, Claire found herself once again standing in front of Blake's office door. She had just finished a meeting with clients, and as she passed by, she saw him sitting at his desk, reviewing some papers. There was something about the quiet of the office that evening that felt different, as if the whole world had slowed down for just a moment. Taking a deep breath, Claire knocked on the door. "Come in," Blake's voice called, and Claire entered, trying to hide the nervous flutter in her chest. Blake looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. It was as if the tension between them had reached a breaking point. Finally, Blake spoke. "Claire, I've been thinking about us," he said, his voice low and serious. "And I think it's time we stop pretending that nothing is happening. I care about you, and I think you care about me too." Claire's heart raced at his words. She had known this moment was coming, but now that it was here, she felt a wave of uncertainty. "Blake, she started, but he interrupted her, standing up from his desk and walking toward her. "I know this isn't easy," he said, taking her hands in his. "I know we've been dancing around our feelings for a while now, but I want to be honest with you. I want to be with you, Claire. Not just as your boss, but as someone who wants to build something real with you." Claire looked up at him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of hesitation, but all she saw was sincerity. She had always kept a wall up around her heart, afraid of getting hurt, but with Blake, the wall seemed to be crumbling. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've spent so long taking care of everyone else, making sure everything works out. I don't know how to be vulnerable, to let someone else in." Blake's expression softened, and he gently cupped her face in his hands. "You don't have to be perfect, Claire. You don't have to have everything figured out. All I'm asking is that you let me be there for you. Let me show you that I'm not going anywhere." Claire felt a tear slip down her cheek, and Blake wiped it away with his thumb. In that moment, she realized that she had been holding on to her fears for too long. She had spent so much of her life living for others, trying to keep everything together, that she had never allowed herself the chance to truly live for herself. Blake was offering her something she had never dared to dream of: love, companionship, and a future built together. But it wasn't just about what Blake was offering. It was about what she was ready to give in return. "I'm scared," Claire admitted, her voice shaky. "But I don't want to be scared anymore. I want to try, Blake. I want to see where this can go." Blake smiled, a soft, tender smile that made Claire's heart swell. "That's all I needed to hear," he said, pulling her into a gentle embrace. They stood there for a moment, wrapped in each other's arms, the weight of their emotions heavy in the air. It felt like the beginning of something new, something uncertain, but also something beautiful. Over the next few weeks, Claire and Blake began to explore what their relationship could be. They spent time together outside of work, going on walks through the city, sharing meals, and slowly but surely, learning more about each other. Claire's heart was still a little hesitant, but with every passing day, she felt herself falling more deeply for Blake. She saw how he cared for her, how he supported her, and how he made her feel like she was the most important person in his world. But there was still one thing hanging over her head. Blake's past. He had never spoken much about it, but Claire knew there was more to his story than he had let on. One evening, as they sat in his apartment, drinking wine and talking about their future, Claire decided to ask. "Blake, I know we've talked a lot about our lives, but I don't know much about your past. What happened before all of this?" Blake looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he set his glass down and took a deep breath. "It's not something I like to talk about," he said quietly. "But I'll tell you, if you're ready to hear it." Claire nodded, her heart heavy with anticipation. She didn't know what to expect, but she was ready to listen. As Blake began to share his story, Claire realized just how much he had been through, how much pain and loss he had endured to get to where he was. And in that moment, she understood why he was the way he was, why he had built walls around his heart. But she also realized that she was the one who could help him take those walls down, just as he had helped her take hers down. Together, they could build something strong, something lasting. And for the first time in her life, Claire felt like she had found someone who truly saw her, not just for her work, but for who she was as a person. The future was still uncertain, but with Blake by her side, Claire was ready to face whatever came next. As Claire listened to Blake's story, she realized just how much of himself he had kept hidden. His past, the pain and the struggles, had shaped the man he was today. Blake wasn't just the confident, successful businessman she had seen in the office, he was someone who had endured loss, failure, and heartache. He had built his empire not just with ambition but with the scars of his past, and it made Claire admire him even more. But she also knew that Blake had allowed her into a part of his life that was deeply personal, something he had never shared with anyone else. It felt like they were starting to build a real foundation for something beyond their professional connection. Blake's vulnerability made her feel closer to him, and she could sense the same openness in him when it came to her. For the first time, they weren't just two colleagues working together, they were two people who cared for each other deeply. In the days that followed, Claire's feelings for Blake grew even stronger. They spent more time together, both in and out of the office. They would have late-night conversations, discussing everything from their childhoods to their dreams for the future. Blake would often surprise her with small gestures, like bringing her favorite coffee or taking her to new places in the city that he thought she would enjoy. It was clear that he was trying to show her how much he cared, and with each passing day, Claire felt more and more like she was falling for him. But as their relationship deepened, so did the complexity of their situation. Claire had always been the one who looked after others, her family, her friends, her work. She had never been one to put herself first. But now, with Blake in her life, she was beginning to realize how much she had neglected her own desires and needs. She had built walls around herself for so long, and Blake had been the first person to break through them. Yet, with that came fear. She didn't want to lose herself in him. She didn't want to lose the independence that had always defined her. One evening, as Claire sat in her apartment reflecting on the days that had passed, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Blake, *, I need to see you tonight. There's something important I want to talk to you about. Her heart raced as she read the message. What could it be? Was he going to ask her something big? Maybe this was the moment he would want to take things even further. Claire quickly got dressed and made her way to Blake's apartment. When she arrived, Blake greeted her at the door with his usual smile, but there was something different in his eyes. It was the same intensity she had seen before, but now it seemed to hold more urgency. Claire, he said softly, leading her into the living room. There's something I need to tell you. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I think it's time I tell you everything. Claire sat down on the couch, her heart beating faster. She could tell that whatever he was about to say was important. Blake took a deep breath, as if gathering his thoughts. Before we got involved, I was dealing with a lot of things I didn't share with you. My past, my work, it all came with a cost. And I need to be honest with you about it. Claire nodded, not sure what to expect. Blake had already shared so much of his personal life with her, but she could tell that whatever he was about to say would change the course of their relationship. Blake continued, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I've been married before, he said. It was a long time ago, but it ended in a way that still haunts me. I've kept it a secret because I didn't want anyone to see me as damaged, but the truth is, it's a part of who I am. And I need you to know that before things go any further. Claire sat still, processing his words. She had suspected that Blake had some kind of complicated history, but hearing it from him directly felt different. He had been so open with her, and yet this part of his life was still a raw wound. She could see the pain in his eyes, and for a moment, Claire just wanted to reach out and comfort him. Blake, she said softly, I appreciate your honesty. But I need to ask you something. What does this mean for us? What does it mean for our future? Blake looked at her, his eyes filled with a mix of regret and hope. It means that I'm ready to move forward, he said. But I need you to understand that I have baggage. I have things from my past that I'm still working through. And I need to know if you're willing to take that on with me. Claire took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been dreading, the moment when she had to face the reality of their relationship. She had fallen for Blake, but could she truly accept all of him, including his past? She had her own struggles, her own history, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to dive deeper into a relationship that was already complicated by secrets and scars. But as she looked at Blake, she realized that she didn't have all the answers. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that this was a chance worth taking. "I'm not going to lie, Blake," she said, her voice steady. "I'm scared. I've never been in a relationship like this before, and I don't know what the future holds. But I care about you. And I'm willing to try, if you are." Blake's face softened, and he reached out to take her hand. "That's all I need to hear," he said, his voice full of relief. "We'll take it one step at a time." Claire smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was on the right path. They didn't have all the answers, but they had each other. And together, they would face whatever came next. In the weeks following their conversation, Claire and Blake found themselves navigating the complexities of their growing relationship. Things were no longer simple. They had both admitted their feelings for one another, but with those feelings came new challenges and fears that neither of them had anticipated. They had agreed to take things slow, but even as they spent more time together, the tension between them felt electric. Claire could sense that Blake was still carrying the weight of his past, but he was trying to move forward. He had promised her that he was ready to build a future with her, and while Claire was beginning to believe him, she still wasn't sure what that future looked like. One evening, after a long day of meetings and deadlines, Blake called Claire, his voice warm and familiar. "I've been thinking about our conversation," he said. "And I want to take you somewhere special this weekend. Something private, just the two of us." Claire's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea what Blake had planned, but she couldn't deny the excitement that fluttered in her chest. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice curious. "It's a surprise," Blake replied with a playful tone. "But I promise you'll love it. Just pack an overnight bag. I'll pick you up on Saturday." Claire agreed, not knowing what to expect but trusting Blake, as she always did. Saturday arrived, and true to his word, Blake picked her up at noon, his black SUV waiting at the curb. He greeted her with a warm smile, and Claire couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation build inside her. As they drove out of the city, the familiar skyline slowly faded behind them, replaced by rolling hills and open fields. They were headed somewhere remote, away from the hustle and bustle of their busy lives. Blake didn't say much as they drove, but Claire could feel the excitement in the air. He had always been the one in control, the one with the plan, and Claire was learning to let go and trust that wherever they were headed, it was going to be something memorable. After a few hours, they arrived at a charming countryside estate, nestled at the base of a mountain. The place was breathtaking. A large, rustic cabin stood in front of a serene lake, surrounded by tall trees. It was beautiful, peaceful, and far removed from the world they both knew. Blake led her inside, showing her to a cozy room with a large window that overlooked the lake. "I thought you'd enjoy the view," Blake said softly, his gaze lingering on Claire as she took in the scenery. "It's so peaceful here," she replied, her voice filled with awe. They spent the rest of the day hiking around the property, enjoying the fresh air and the tranquility of the place. Blake seemed more relaxed than Claire had ever seen him, and as they walked along the shoreline, he took her hand in his. "I wanted to bring you here because I want to show you something," Blake said, his voice low and serious. Claire looked at him, curiosity flashing in her eyes. "What is it?" she asked. Blake stopped walking and turned to face her. "I'm ready to build a life with you, Claire. I don't want to wait anymore. I've spent too much time letting my past hold me back. But with you, I see a future. I see everything I've been waiting for." Claire felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had never seen Blake so vulnerable, so open. She had always admired his strength, but now, she saw a man who was willing to let go of his past for a chance at something real. "Blake, Claire began, her voice trembling with the weight of his words. I don't know what to say. I've never been in a relationship like this before. I've always been the one holding things together, making sure everything works. But with you, I feel like I'm allowed to let go, to be myself. And that terrifies me. Blake stepped closer to her, gently cupping her face in his hands. You don't have to be perfect, Claire, he said softly. You don't have to have everything figured out. All I need is for you to be with me, to take this journey together. I'll be here, every step of the way. Claire's heart raced, and in that moment, she realized that she had found something she never thought was possible, a love that was patient, understanding, and full of promise. She had always been afraid of letting someone in, of losing herself in the process. But with Blake, it felt different. It felt like a partnership, a journey they would take together. I'm ready, Claire whispered, her voice steady now. I'm ready to build a future with you, Blake. I don't know where this will lead, but I want to find out with you. Blake's smile was soft and filled with relief. He pulled her into a gentle embrace, and for the first time, Claire didn't feel the weight of her fears or doubts. She felt at peace, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. As the sun began to set behind the mountains, casting a warm glow over the lake, Claire knew that this weekend had marked a turning point in their relationship. They had both let go of their pasts, embraced their feelings, and were finally ready to take the next step. They didn't have all the answers, but they had each other. And for the first time in a long time, Claire felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. The next few weeks were a whirlwind for Claire and Blake. Their relationship was no longer just something unspoken, it had become something tangible, something they both worked hard to build. Claire had never been one to fall easily, but with Blake, it was different. She was learning to trust, to let go of the walls she had spent so many years building around herself. But with this new emotional vulnerability came new challenges. Blake's world was demanding. As a successful entrepreneur, his life was often filled with meetings, travels, and constant decisions. While Claire had grown accustomed to the fast-paced environment, she found herself struggling to balance her professional life with her deepening relationship with Blake. Every time she felt like she was catching up with him, he would move even faster. One afternoon, Blake invited Claire to a dinner with some important business partners at one of the city's top restaurants. She knew it was going to be an evening of formalities, but Blake had reassured her that he wanted her there, not just as his partner, but as someone he valued. Claire had dressed carefully, wanting to impress not only the business partners but also herself. She had always felt a bit out of place in such glamorous settings, but Blake's presence made everything feel more accessible. As they arrived at the restaurant, Blake's arm around her waist, Claire felt a sense of pride. He was proud of her, and he wasn't afraid to show it. You look incredible, Blake whispered in her ear, his voice low and warm, sending a shiver down her spine. Claire smiled, feeling the tension in her chest ease. Thank you, Blake. I just want to make sure I don't embarrass myself tonight. Blake chuckled softly, giving her a reassuring squeeze. You won't. Just be yourself. Inside the restaurant, the atmosphere was elegant but intimidating. The soft clinking of fine silverware, the quiet murmur of important conversations, the waiters in their crisp uniforms, all of it felt overwhelming. But Blake led her confidently, introducing her to several of his colleagues. Claire had always been more comfortable behind the scenes, not at the center of attention. Yet, with Blake by her side, she felt like she could handle whatever was thrown her way. Throughout the dinner, Claire could see how respected Blake was by his peers. His sharp wit and natural charisma filled the room, and she found herself watching him with admiration. He wasn't just the man she was falling for, he was a force to be reckoned with in the business world. But as the evening went on, Claire couldn't help but notice the distance growing between them. Blake was often pulled away by his business partners, discussing new projects, deals, and ideas. Claire, on the other hand, found herself sitting alone at the table, smiling politely at strangers, trying to join in on conversations that didn't seem to have anything to do with her. As the evening wore on, she began to feel like an outsider in his world. By the time dinner was over, Claire was exhausted. Blake noticed the change in her demeanor as they left the restaurant. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft with concern. Claire hesitated, unsure of how to express what she was feeling. I feel like I'm always on the outside looking in," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Like I'm not really part of your world." Blake stopped in his tracks, turning to face her. "Claire, that's not true. You are a part of this world. I'm proud of you, of everything you've accomplished. I want you here with me, in every aspect of my life." Claire looked up at him, her eyes searching his face for sincerity. "But I don't know if I'm enough, Blake. This world, your world, it's so different from mine. I don't know if I can keep up." Blake gently cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing against her skin. "You don't have to keep up, Claire. You just have to be you. I love you for who you are, not because of what you can do for me or what world you belong to. You're my world, Claire." His words, soft and heartfelt, washed over her, and Claire felt a weight lift from her chest. She had spent so long trying to prove herself, to be something she wasn't, that she had forgotten what it felt like to simply be loved for who she truly was. "I'm sorry," she whispered, feeling tears well up in her eyes. I don't want to let you down." Blake shook his head, his expression gentle. "You could never let me down, Claire. I want you to be happy. That's all that matters." Claire felt a surge of emotion, and before she knew it, she was in his arms, burying her face against his chest. She didn't have all the answers, and she didn't know what the future would bring, but in that moment, she knew one thing for certain: she didn't have to figure it out alone. Blake was with her, and together, they would face whatever challenges came their way. As they stood there in the quiet of the night, Claire realized that she didn't have to be perfect to be loved. She didn't have to fit into a mold or live up to expectations. All she had to do was be herself, and with Blake by her side, that was enough. In the weeks that followed, Claire began to adjust to her new life with Blake, though it wasn't always easy. She had opened up to him, allowed herself to embrace the vulnerability of their relationship, but there were still moments of uncertainty that lingered in her heart. The pressure of balancing her professional life with her personal feelings continued to weigh on her, especially as Blake's business demands seemed to intensify. Yet, Blake's reassurance gave her strength. He was always there, offering her a steady hand and an open heart, but Claire couldn't shake the feeling that she was still struggling to find her place in his world. Despite this, Claire knew one thing: she couldn't keep running from the life she wanted. It wasn't about being perfect or fitting into a mold, it was about accepting herself, flaws and all, and embracing the future she was building with Blake. One night, after a long week of work, Blake surprised Claire with an invitation to a quiet weekend getaway. "I think we both could use a break," he said. "No business, no distractions, just us." Claire agreed, eager for some time away from the pressures that had been building around them. Blake whisked her away to a secluded cabin in the woods, far from the noise and stress of the city. The air was crisp, and the landscape was covered in a blanket of snow, creating the perfect winter retreat. As they arrived at the cabin, Claire couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The stillness of the snow-covered trees and the quiet of the countryside provided a stark contrast to the busy city life they were used to. Blake had planned every detail meticulously. A cozy fireplace crackled in the living room, and the aroma of homemade food filled the air. It was clear that he had thought of everything to make the weekend perfect. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Blake turned to Claire, his expression serious but gentle. "Claire, I've been thinking a lot about where we're headed," he said, his voice low. "We've both come so far in this relationship, but I want to make sure we're on the same page. I want to know if you're ready for what comes next, for the kind of future we could have together." Claire's heart raced as she met his gaze. She had never felt more certain about anything in her life, but the weight of Blake's words made her pause. She had been caught up in the whirlwind of their connection, but now it was time to face the reality of what that future would look like. "Blake," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "I've never been more sure about anything than I am about us. I'm ready for this. I'm ready for the future, and for whatever comes next." Blake's face softened, and he smiled, his eyes filled with warmth. He reached out and took her hand, holding it firmly in his. "I want to build something lasting with you, Claire. I want to create a life together, one where we both can be ourselves, support each other, and face whatever challenges come our way." Claire felt a sense of relief wash over her. In that moment, she realized how much she had grown, how much she had changed since meeting Blake. She had always been afraid to take chances, to open herself up to something bigger than what she knew. But now, with Blake, she understood that love wasn't about perfection. It was about growth, trust, and the willingness to face the unknown together. As the weekend continued, they spent their days hiking through the snow, cooking meals together, and talking about their hopes for the future. They talked about family, careers, dreams, and fears. Everything that had been left unsaid now came to the surface. It felt like the perfect escape, a moment of clarity in the midst of all the chaos they had been navigating. By the time Sunday afternoon rolled around, Claire and Blake had talked about everything. They had shared their deepest thoughts, their long-term goals, and their fears, and in doing so, they had solidified their bond. As they stood at the edge of a frozen lake, holding hands, Blake turned to Claire and said, "I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I want to share it with you. I want you by my side, always." Claire smiled, her heart full. "And I want the same, Blake. I want to be with you, through everything." Their lips met in a kiss that was tender, full of promise. It was a moment that felt timeless, like everything had fallen into place. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of them standing there in the quiet, peaceful snow. That weekend, Claire realized that while their journey together might not always be easy, it would be worth it. They were building something real, something lasting. And that was all that mattered. As they returned to the city, back to their busy lives and the challenges that awaited them, Claire knew that she was ready. She was ready to take the next step with Blake, to build a life together, no matter what obstacles might come their way. She wasn't alone anymore. With Blake, she had a partner who would support her, challenge her, and love her through it all. As the days went by, Claire and Blake's relationship continued to grow stronger. After their weekend getaway, Claire felt more confident about the future, but she also knew that they still had obstacles to overcome. Their lives were complicated, Blake's business, Claire's career, and the growing expectations they both had for one another. Yet, despite the challenges, Claire couldn't deny that she had never felt more alive. She was in love with Blake, and for the first time, she was willing to let herself experience everything that came with that love. Back in the city, things were hectic as always. Claire was immersed in her work, constantly striving to meet deadlines and tackle new projects. But now, she was doing it with a sense of purpose, knowing that Blake was by her side. They spent their evenings together, sharing meals, talking about their day, and making plans for the future. They had fallen into a comfortable routine, but there were still moments of tension. Claire had learned to embrace the life she was building with Blake, but she had also started to realize that their worlds were very different. Blake's business world was fast-paced, filled with high-stakes deals and constant pressure. Claire, on the other hand, had always lived a simpler life, one focused on stability and security. She sometimes found herself overwhelmed by the intensity of Blake's world, feeling like she was struggling to keep up. One evening, after a particularly stressful week, Claire found herself sitting alone in the living room of their apartment, staring out the window at the city lights. Blake had been caught up in a last-minute meeting, and Claire hadn't heard from him all evening. She understood the demands of his work, but a part of her couldn't help but feel neglected. She had always been independent, but there was something about being in a relationship with someone like Blake that made her realize how much she craved attention and connection. As she sat there, lost in her thoughts, Blake finally walked through the door, looking tired but still wearing his trademark smile. "Hey, I'm sorry I'm late," he said, his voice apologetic. "I know you've had a long day too." Claire smiled weakly but didn't respond right away. Instead, she sat in silence for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Blake sat down next to her, sensing the shift in the air. "What's wrong?" he asked softly. Claire hesitated, unsure of how to express what she was feeling. I feel like I'm losing touch with you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You're always so busy with work, and I don't feel like we're really connecting anymore. Blake looked at her, his expression softening with understanding. Claire, I never want you to feel that way. I know my work takes up a lot of my time, but that doesn't mean I don't care about you. You're everything to me. Claire shook her head, her eyes filled with uncertainty. I know you care, Blake. But sometimes it feels like I'm just a part of your life that you fit in when you have time. And I don't want to feel like I'm competing with your career. Blake took her hand in his grip firm yet gentle. You're not competing with my career, Claire. You're my priority. I've just been caught up in a lot of things lately. But I promise, we'll figure this out. I'll make more time for you. Claire felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had been holding on to so many fears, convinced that Blake's busy schedule meant that she wasn't important to him. But hearing his words, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, made her realize that maybe she was just overthinking things. I just don't want us to lose what we have, she admitted. Blake smiled, his thumb gently brushing over her hand. We won't. I'll make sure of that. Let's take this one step at a time. I know we have a lot of challenges ahead, but we'll face them together. The next few weeks were a turning point for both of them. Blake took steps to create more balance in his life. He scheduled more time for their relationship, for simple moments that allowed them to connect. They started going on weekend trips together, spending time away from the pressures of their everyday lives. It wasn't always easy, but they were learning to compromise, to give each other what they needed. Claire also realized that she had to make some changes in her own life. She had spent so much time focused on her work and trying to prove herself, but she realized she had neglected her own happiness. Blake helped her see that it was okay to ask for what she needed, to let herself be cared for and supported. She began to open up more, not just to Blake but to herself. As their relationship evolved, so did their understanding of what it meant to truly share a life together. They both had their own dreams, their own ambitions, but they were learning to weave them together into something greater. They started talking about their future more seriously, discussing the possibility of living together, of building a life that wasn't just about their careers but about the family they were starting to envision. One night, after a quiet dinner at home, Blake turned to Claire with a thoughtful expression. I've been thinking, he began, about us. About everything we've been through. I want to make this work, Claire. I want to take the next step with you. What do you think? Claire felt her heart swell with emotion. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment when they would truly commit to building a future together. She smiled, her eyes shining. I think I'm ready, she said, her voice filled with certainty. I'm ready for the next step, Blake. Together. They both knew that there would be challenges ahead, but they also knew that they could face them together. With every step they took, their bond grew stronger, and Claire couldn't help but feel that, for the first time in her life, she was exactly where she was meant to be. The following months were a period of growth and change for Claire and Blake. Their relationship had evolved from the initial uncertainty into something deeper, more profound. They had worked through their individual insecurities, their pasts, and the challenges that came with blending their lives. Blake's commitment to spending more time with Claire had made a significant impact on her. He was no longer the distant businessman she had once known, now, he was her partner in every sense of the word. Their time together was filled with shared laughter, quiet moments, and deep conversations about the future. Claire had always been cautious, guarded, but now, with Blake, she was learning to open up in ways she had never thought possible. Yet, despite the progress they had made, Claire could feel the weight of the future pressing down on them. Blake had been busy with an upcoming merger that would expand his company's reach, and Claire had been thrown into more complex projects at work. The demands on both of their time had increased, and although they tried to make time for each other, it was clear that the strain was starting to show. One evening, after Blake had returned from a long business trip, they sat in their living room, the air heavy with unspoken words. Blake was tired, his face marked with exhaustion, and Claire could sense the tension in his posture. He sat down beside her, rubbing his temples as if trying to fight off the weight of the world. "I know we've been through a lot lately," Blake said, breaking the silence. "But I don't want us to lose sight of what we've built together." Claire looked at him, her heart aching for the man who had given so much of himself to his business and to their relationship. She knew he was under immense pressure, but she also knew that their relationship couldn't survive if they didn't address the growing distance between them. "Blake, I'm not going anywhere," Claire said softly, taking his hand in hers. "But I feel like we're starting to drift apart. We've been so focused on our careers and everything else that we've forgotten about each other." Blake let out a heavy sigh, his fingers gently tracing the lines of her hand. "I know. I've been so consumed with work that I haven't given you the attention you deserve. I've been trying to keep everything together, but I see now that I've been neglecting the most important part of my life." Claire looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity and regret in his gaze. She knew that he wasn't deliberately ignoring her, the pressures of his business had simply taken their toll. "Blake, I don't need you to be perfect. I don't need all of your time. But I need to feel like I matter. Like we're still in this together." Blake nodded, his eyes softening. "I've always been afraid of losing control, of letting go of everything I've worked for. But I've realized that if I don't make time for us, I'll lose what really matters." Claire reached up and cupped his face, her fingers brushing against his cheek. "We can make this work, Blake. We just have to be honest with each other and make an effort to stay connected." Blake smiled, a faint but genuine smile that made Claire's heart flutter. "I promise you, Claire. I'll do better. I won't let work come between us. You're my priority." It was a promise that Claire knew Blake would keep. He had always been a man of his word, and she trusted him more than she had ever trusted anyone. The following weeks brought a renewed sense of balance to their relationship. Blake made a conscious effort to spend more time with Claire, whether it was a quiet evening at home or a spontaneous weekend getaway. They found joy in the simple things, cooking dinner together, taking walks around the city, and sitting in the park, enjoying each other's company without any distractions. Slowly but surely, Claire began to feel the distance between them close. Their relationship was no longer just about navigating the demands of their respective careers, it was about prioritizing each other, making sure that they never lost sight of what they had. One night, as they sat on the balcony of their apartment, watching the city lights twinkle below, Claire rested her head on Blake's shoulder. "This is what I've always wanted," she said, her voice quiet but filled with contentment. "I just want us to be happy." Blake kissed the top of her head, his arms wrapping around her. "We will be, Claire. As long as we're in this together, we'll find our way. We've already made it through so much, and I know we can face whatever comes next." Claire smiled, knowing that Blake was right. They had already overcome so many obstacles, and together, they were stronger than ever. As they sat there, holding each other in the peaceful silence of the night, Claire realized that this was just the beginning. There would always be challenges ahead, but as long as they faced them together, there was nothing they couldn't handle. They were a team, and together, they could build a future that was filled with love, trust, and the unwavering support they both needed. For the first time in her life, Claire felt truly at peace, knowing that with Blake by her side, she could face anything the world had to offer. As Claire and Blake settled into their new rhythm, life seemed to flow more smoothly, though the challenges they faced never fully disappeared. Their relationship had evolved into something deeply meaningful, built on trust, open communication, and a mutual understanding of each other's needs. They had found a delicate balance between their careers and personal lives, and while the pressures of their individual ambitions remained, they had learned how to prioritize what truly mattered. It was a balance that wasn't always easy to maintain, but it was one they were willing to fight for. As the weeks passed, Claire's confidence in their relationship continued to grow. She felt more secure in her place within Blake's world and more certain of her ability to be true to herself while sharing her life with him. Still, there were moments when doubt crept in, when she questioned whether they could continue to sustain this balance in the long run. Blake, too, felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. As his business expanded, so did the responsibilities that came with it. He was constantly pulled in different directions, attending high-profile meetings, managing new partnerships, and staying on top of the ever-evolving demands of his empire. And while he always made time for Claire, there were moments when she could sense that he was stretched thin. One evening, after Blake had returned from a week-long business trip overseas, Claire noticed that he was quieter than usual. He had been away for days, and she had missed him deeply, but tonight, something felt different. They sat together at their dining table, eating a quiet dinner, but there was an air of tension that Claire couldn't ignore. "Blake, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice gentle. Blake looked up from his plate, his expression tired but thoughtful. "Yeah, just a lot going on. You know how it is." Claire didn't push him further, but she could tell that something was off. She had learned to read his moods by now, and she knew that when he didn't want to talk, it was because something was weighing heavily on him. After dinner, they moved to the living room, sitting side by side on the couch. Claire watched as Blake absent-mindedly scrolled through his phone, his mind clearly somewhere else. "Blake," she said softly, "we've talked about this before. I need you to be honest with me. If something's bothering you, we can figure it out together." Blake's eyes met hers, and for a moment, Claire saw the vulnerability that he rarely showed. He set his phone down and took a deep breath. "It's just that. I feel like I'm failing you," he admitted. "I'm not spending enough time with you, and when I do, I'm not really here. I'm too focused on work, and I know it's taking a toll on our relationship." Claire felt a lump form in her throat. She knew that Blake was under immense pressure, but hearing him admit it out loud hit her harder than she expected. "Blake," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "you're not failing me. I understand how much you're carrying. But I also need to know that you're not losing yourself in all of this. I need you, too." Blake reached for her hand, his grip tight. "I don't want to lose you, Claire. I don't want to let work come between us, but I also don't want to disappoint you. You mean everything to me." Claire squeezed his hand, trying to calm the storm that had begun to swirl inside her. "I know you don't, Blake. I know how much you care. But we need to find a way to make this work. We can't let the pressure of your business take over everything." Blake nodded, his eyes filled with regret. "I know. I've been so focused on my career that I've neglected the most important part of my life. I don't want to keep doing that." Claire took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "We'll figure this out. We can't do it alone, though. We need to be a team, Blake. We need to support each other, even when things are tough." Blake looked at her, his expression softening. "You're right. I don't want to lose us. I'll make changes. I'll do whatever it takes." Claire smiled gently, her heart swelling with love for him. "I'm here for you, Blake. I'm not going anywhere. But we both need to be present, not just physically, but emotionally." Blake leaned forward and kissed her forehead, his lips warm against her skin. "Thank you, Claire. I promise, I'll do better. For us." In the days that followed, Claire noticed a shift in Blake's behavior. He began prioritizing their time together, carving out moments where they could connect without distractions. He started setting clearer boundaries with his work, refusing to take calls during their dinners or when they were spending time together. Slowly but surely, Blake was learning how to balance the demands of his career with his personal life, and Claire could see the difference. They started taking more weekend trips, visiting places that allowed them to escape the chaos of their everyday lives. On one such trip, as they watched the sun set over the ocean, Blake turned to Claire, his eyes filled with determination. "I'm not going to let anything come between us, Claire. I've learned that nothing is more important than this." Claire smiled, feeling her heart swell with happiness. "I feel the same way," she said, her voice steady with confidence. "As long as we face everything together, we can handle anything." In that moment, Claire realized that their journey wasn't just about overcoming the challenges they faced, it was about finding strength in each other and growing together. They were no longer just individuals trying to make it on their own, they were a team, ready to face whatever the future held. And for the first time in a long time, Claire felt at peace, knowing that no matter what happened, they would be there for each other, through the highs and the lows, the successes and the struggles. Together, they could conquer anything. As the months passed, Claire and Blake continued to grow closer, their bond strengthening with each challenge they faced together. Their relationship, once marked by uncertainty and distance, had blossomed into something deeply meaningful. They had learned to communicate openly, to share their fears and hopes, and to support each other in ways that allowed them both to thrive. Blake's dedication to his work had never wavered, but his commitment to Claire had become just as important. He made time for their relationship, even amidst the pressures of his growing empire. They had found a delicate balance between work and personal life, one that they were both learning to navigate. Yet, despite the progress they had made, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, a quiet tension that she couldn't quite place. Blake had been acting a bit distant lately, his mind clearly preoccupied with the challenges of running a business. He was no longer the man who spent hours talking with her in the evenings, or who took her out on spontaneous weekend trips. The small gestures, the thoughtful surprises, had become less frequent. It wasn't that he didn't care, it was clear that he did. But Claire began to feel the weight of his world pressing down on him, and by extension, on their relationship. One evening, after a particularly long day, Blake came home late, his face tired and drawn. Claire was sitting on the couch, her eyes fixed on the book in her hands, though her mind was elsewhere. She had tried to distract herself with a good story, but the unease she felt had been growing for days, and she couldn't ignore it any longer. Blake entered the room, his footsteps slow, and when he saw her sitting there, his heart sank. He had been so focused on his work that he had neglected the woman who had become the center of his world. He didn't want to admit it, but he knew something had to change. "Claire," he said softly, his voice tired but sincere. "Can we talk?" Claire put her book down and looked up at him. The concern in his voice caught her off guard. She had been waiting for this moment, though she hadn't known exactly how it would play out. "Of course," she replied, her voice calm, but her heart racing. Blake sat down beside her, his gaze focused on the floor for a moment as if searching for the right words. Finally, he spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about us. About how I've been slipping into old habits, letting work take priority over everything else. Over you." Claire's breath caught in her throat. She had seen the signs, had sensed the distance growing between them, but hearing him acknowledge it out loud was different. "Blake, I understand," she said quietly. "You've been under so much pressure, and I know your work is important. But I can't keep pretending that it doesn't hurt when you're not really here with me. When you're physically present, but emotionally absent." Blake's eyes met hers, his heart heavy with regret. "I never meant to hurt you. I've been so focused on trying to fix everything around me that I've forgotten what really matters. And now I'm scared that I'm losing you." Claire shook her head, reaching out to take his hand. "You're not losing me, Blake. But we both have to do our part. We can't keep going down this path where I'm constantly feeling like I'm second to everything else in your life. I need to feel like we're a priority, too." Blake squeezed her hand, his voice softening. "I've been selfish, and I'm sorry. You are my priority, Claire. I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose you. I've just been so caught up in everything else that I've forgotten to put us first." Claire smiled gently, her heart swelling with the understanding between them. "We both have our lives, our careers. But that doesn't mean we can't make time for each other. We need to find a balance, Blake. We need to make sure we don't lose ourselves, or each other, in the process." Blake nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "I will make it work. Claire. I promise you that. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to make this relationship stronger. I've been blind to what matters, but I see it now. You matter more than anything." Claire felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had feared that their relationship was drifting apart, that the pressures of life and work would tear them apart, but Blake's words gave her hope. They both had made mistakes, but they were willing to fix them, to put in the effort to ensure that their love would endure. That night, as they sat together in silence, Claire knew that this conversation was just the beginning of a new chapter for them. There would still be challenges ahead, but they had committed to facing them together. The bond they shared was stronger than ever, and Claire finally understood that love wasn't just about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about supporting each other through the tough times, being there when it mattered, and working together to create something lasting. The road ahead was uncertain, but with Blake by her side, Claire felt ready to face whatever the future held. Together, they could overcome anything. After their heart-to-heart conversation, things between Claire and Blake began to shift. There was a renewed sense of purpose in their relationship, and a promise to each other to not only stay connected but to grow together. Blake was taking concrete steps to balance his career and their relationship, cutting back on late-night meetings and finding ways to make Claire feel like a priority again. He began making small but meaningful gestures to show that he was present and fully engaged in their lives. For the first time in a long time, Claire felt the weight of their relationship lift off her shoulders, replaced with a sense of security she hadn't known was possible. But as with all relationships, progress wasn't without its bumps. Blake's company was still growing rapidly, and he faced new challenges that often demanded his attention. Claire understood that, but there were moments when it felt like old habits were creeping back in. One afternoon, after Blake had missed their dinner plans for the third time in a week, Claire couldn't help but feel the familiar pang of disappointment. She had been patient, she had been understanding, but tonight, something inside her snapped. She had tried to push away the growing frustration, but it had been building for weeks. When Blake finally called to apologize, she decided it was time to be completely honest with him. "Blake, we need to talk," she said when he answered. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. You're pulling away again, and I can feel it. We agreed that things would change, but I'm starting to feel like I'm the only one making an effort." There was a long silence on the other end of the phone, and Claire's heart sank, unsure of how Blake would respond. When he spoke, his voice was filled with regret. "You're right, Claire. I've been neglecting you, and I'm sorry. I thought I could keep juggling everything, but it's becoming clear that I can't. I don't want to lose you, and I'm not going to let my work come between us again." Claire took a deep breath, her heart still heavy with the weight of their unspoken issues. "Blake, I love you, but I can't keep waiting for the person you promised me you would be. I need to know that I'm not just something that fits into your schedule when it's convenient. I need to feel like I matter." Blake's voice softened, his tone pleading. "You do matter, Claire. You matter more than anything, and I've been blind to the way I've been treating you. I never wanted you to feel second to my work. Please, give me another chance. Let's fix this together." Claire closed her eyes, feeling the sincerity in his words. She knew he loved her, but she also knew that action spoke louder than words. She had to decide if she was willing to continue fighting for this relationship or if she had to walk away for her own happiness. "I'm willing to try, Blake," she said, her voice steady. "But we both need to commit to making changes, to being there for each other, and not just when it's easy. I need to know that you'll be present, not just physically, but emotionally." Blake's sigh of relief came through the phone. "I promise you, Claire, I'm committed. I will do better. I don't want to lose you." It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a step forward, a promise to each other to keep working on their relationship. Over the next few weeks, Blake followed through on his promises. He made a concerted effort to adjust his schedule, even cancelling meetings when it conflicted with time they had set aside together. He would surprise Claire with small gestures, taking her out for coffee, leaving notes in her bag, and planning weekends where they could escape the stress of their busy lives. Claire, too, made adjustments. She realized that she had to let go of some of her own insecurities and trust Blake when he said he was committed to making their relationship work. She started expressing her feelings more openly, telling him when she felt neglected or when something bothered her, instead of bottling it up. Slowly but surely, their relationship became more balanced. They weren't perfect, and there were still challenges to overcome, but they learned to face them together, united in their efforts to prioritize each other. One evening, as they sat together in their apartment, relaxing after a busy day, Blake looked at Claire with a sense of gratitude in his eyes. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Claire," he said softly. "You've been my rock through all of this, and I'm so lucky to have you by my side." Claire smiled, her heart full. "I feel the same way, Blake. I never thought I could be this happy, but with you, I feel like I can do anything." In that moment, Claire realized that love wasn't just about finding someone who would be there for you when it was easy. It was about growing together, facing the hard moments, and learning to communicate and compromise. She had found someone who was not only her partner in life but her equal, someone who was willing to fight for their love just as much as she was. Together, they had built a foundation that was stronger than ever, and Claire knew that no matter what came next, they would face it side by side. Months went by, and the hard work Claire and Blake had put into their relationship started to pay off. Their bond had never been stronger, and the trust they had built allowed them to continue navigating life's challenges together. Claire's career was thriving, and Blake's business was expanding at a pace that even he hadn't expected. They had found a way to balance their personal and professional lives, but that didn't mean everything was perfect. Life had a way of throwing unexpected hurdles at them, and it was during one of those times that Claire and Blake were tested in ways they hadn't anticipated. Blake had been working tirelessly on a new project that involved a high-stakes merger with a competitor. The pressure was enormous, and the deal had the potential to change the entire landscape of his business. He was often away for meetings, and when he was home, his mind seemed occupied with strategy, numbers, and the overwhelming demands of the project. Claire, on the other hand, had started to feel like she was losing a part of him. She could see the stress in his eyes, the way his once effortless smile had become a rare sight. She had become accustomed to their routines, their balance, but now it felt like they were drifting apart again, even if neither of them wanted it. One evening, after Blake had returned from another exhausting meeting, Claire found herself waiting for him at home, her mind racing. She had missed him, but more than that, she missed the person he used to be, the one who would talk with her about everything and nothing, the one who would make time to be with her no matter how busy he was. When Blake walked through the door, he didn't immediately see the tension in the air. He was distracted, his shoulders slumped from the weight of his day, and he went straight to the kitchen to grab a drink. Claire stood there, watching him, her thoughts swirling. She had to say something, even if it meant confronting him about the growing distance between them. "Blake," she began, her voice soft but firm, "we need to talk." Blake froze, his back to her, and he slowly turned around. There was something in her tone that made his stomach twist. "What's going on, Claire?" he asked, his voice tinged with worry. She took a deep breath, gathering the courage to speak her truth. "I feel like we're losing touch again. You're always busy with work, and when you are here, you're not really present. I can't keep doing this. I need to know that I matter, that I'm not just an afterthought when your work is done." Blake's expression faltered for a moment, and he walked over to her, sitting down beside her on the couch. "I'm sorry, Claire. I've been so focused on this merger, I didn't even realize how much I've been pulling away." "You're right. I've been so caught up in everything else that I've been neglecting you. And that's not fair to you." Claire's heart softened at his words, but the weight of her feelings didn't disappear. "Blake, I understand that your work is important, but it's not just about the time we spend together. It's about the connection we have. When you're here but you're not really here, it hurts. I need you to be present with me, not just physically, but emotionally too." Blake took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "I hear you, and I promise, I will do better. I can't keep letting this business take over every part of my life. I love you, Claire. I don't want to lose you over something that, in the end, isn't as important as us." Claire felt a wave of relief wash over her, but there was still a part of her that needed more. "I need to see that change, Blake. I need to know that we're not just talking about it, but that you're actually going to take the steps to be there for me, for us. I don't want to feel like I'm constantly competing for your attention. I want us to be a priority." Blake nodded, his face filled with determination. "You are my priority, Claire. I've just been blind to the way I've been acting. I'll make the changes, I'll take the time, and I'll be present. I'm not letting you go. I'm not letting this business come between us again. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of their conversation hanging in the air. For the first time in months, Claire felt like they were truly on the same page, and for the first time in a long time, she believed him. Blake had always been a man of his word, and while there were no guarantees, she knew that if they both committed to making their relationship a priority, they could get through this. Over the next few weeks, Blake worked hard to make good on his promises. He rearranged his schedule, prioritizing his time with Claire, and even started to delegate more at work so that he could spend evenings with her, without the distractions of emails and phone calls. He planned dates, took time off when needed, and made it clear that Claire was just as important to him as his business. Claire, in turn, opened herself up more, voicing her feelings and expressing when she felt disconnected. She realized that while Blake had made changes, she also had a role in their relationship and needed to continue being open with him. Slowly but surely, their connection deepened. They found new ways to spend time together, creating memories and rediscovering the bond that had initially brought them together. Their relationship wasn't perfect, there would always be challenges ahead, but they were learning how to face them side by side. One evening, as they sat on the couch, wrapped in a cozy blanket, Blake looked at Claire with a smile that made her heart skip a beat. "I've never been happier, Claire. I know I've made mistakes, but I'll keep working to be better for you, for us." Claire smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "We're in this together, Blake. And that's all I need to know." The future was still uncertain, but with Blake by her side, Claire knew they would continue to grow and navigate whatever came next as a team. As the months passed, Claire and Blake's relationship continued to strengthen, though life didn't stop throwing challenges their way. They had found a balance between work and their personal lives, but the unpredictability of their careers and the demands of Blake's business kept them on their toes. Claire had noticed that, while things had gotten better, there were still moments of uncertainty. She had grown comfortable with Blake's presence again, but his busy schedule still sometimes made her feel like she was competing for his attention. However, the love between them had solidified, and Claire had learned to trust that Blake was committed to their future, even when his work was overwhelming. As spring arrived, bringing a new sense of hope and freshness to the city, so did the beginning of a new chapter in their relationship. Blake had come a long way from the days when he was too caught up in his work to prioritize their connection. He had learned the value of spending quality time with Claire, and now, he made sure to carve out moments in his hectic schedule to truly be with her. They had planned a weekend getaway to a vineyard in the countryside, hoping that a peaceful retreat would allow them both to recharge and reconnect. The idea of escaping the city for a few days seemed like the perfect way to reset, and Claire couldn't wait to spend uninterrupted time with Blake, away from the pressures of their careers. As they arrived at the vineyard, Claire was struck by the beauty of the rolling hills and the rows of grapevines stretching as far as the eye could see. The air was fresh, and the sounds of nature replaced the usual noise of city life. Blake, ever the planner, had arranged everything, from private wine tastings to a cozy dinner by the fireplace. For the first time in months, Claire felt like she could fully relax, not worried about the next phone call or meeting, just enjoying the serenity of the moment. That evening, as they sat on the terrace overlooking the vineyard, sipping wine and watching the sun set behind the hills, Blake turned to Claire, his expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking a lot about the future, about us," he said, his voice serious. Claire's heart skipped a beat as she looked at him, wondering what was on his mind. "What about us?" she asked softly. Blake smiled, a mix of excitement and uncertainty in his eyes. "I know we've both been through a lot to get here, but I truly believe that we have something special. I want to build a life with you, Claire. I want to make sure we don't just let the day-to-day challenges take over our love, that we keep this feeling, this connection, alive." Claire's breath caught in her throat. She had always known that Blake was deeply invested in their relationship, but hearing him speak so openly about their future made her heart swell with emotion. "Blake, I want that too," she said, her voice steady but filled with conviction. "I want to be with you, through everything. I want to build a life with you, one that's not just about balancing work, but about truly living, loving, and growing together." Blake's face lit up with a smile that made Claire's heart flutter. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I don't want to wait any longer. I want to start thinking about what comes next for us, living together, building a future, sharing everything. Claire nodded, her thoughts racing with possibilities. She had never been one to rush into major life decisions, but with Blake, everything felt different. It felt right. She had found a partner who understood her needs, supported her dreams, and loved her with a depth she hadn't known was possible. The conversation turned to plans, possibilities, and dreams for the future. They talked about the possibility of living together, of creating a home that reflected both of their personalities and values. Blake shared his hopes of expanding his business while finding a way to have more time for himself and Claire. Claire, in turn, expressed her desire to continue growing in her career while finding a balance that allowed her to be fully present with Blake. It was a conversation filled with excitement, but also one that reflected the reality of their lives. They both had ambitions, dreams, and goals, but they were determined to build a life together where their relationship was just as important as everything else. The next day, they spent the morning walking through the vineyard, enjoying the simplicity of being together in nature. Blake was thoughtful, taking in the beauty around them, and Claire couldn't help but smile at how much he had changed. The man who had once been consumed by his business now seemed at peace, content to be present in the moment. As they sat down for lunch, Blake took Claire's hand in his eyes filled with warmth. "Claire, I'm so grateful for you," he said, his voice sincere. "You've been patient, understanding, and so incredibly supportive. I promise that I will never take you for granted again. We're building something amazing together, and I'm excited for what's to come." Claire felt her heart swell as she looked at him, knowing that she had found someone who was not only her partner but also her best friend. "I'm excited too, Blake," she said, her voice soft but filled with certainty. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." As the weekend came to a close, Claire and Blake returned to the city, both feeling renewed and more connected than ever. They knew that their journey wasn't without its challenges, but they were ready to take the next step, together. The future was bright, filled with possibility and promise, and Claire couldn't help but feel that they were just getting started. They had worked hard to get to this point, and now they were ready to build the life they had always dreamed of. Together, they would navigate whatever came their way, knowing that their love was the foundation on which everything else would stand. As the seasons changed, so did the nature of Claire and Blake's relationship. The honeymoon phase had faded, but in its place, they found a deeper, more comfortable connection. They had weathered many storms together, each challenge only bringing them closer. The balance they had worked so hard to create between their demanding careers and their personal lives had become second nature. However, life had a way of throwing curveballs, and this time, it came in the form of a life-changing decision for Blake. His company, which had been growing steadily, was now poised to expand even further, and with that expansion came opportunities that could significantly alter their future. Blake had been offered a chance to take on a much larger role, one that would require even more of his time and energy. It was an opportunity he couldn't ignore. For the first time in a long while, Blake found himself at a crossroads. He had promised Claire that he would always prioritize their relationship, but this new position seemed too good to pass up. It could secure his legacy, bring in more success, and establish him as a true powerhouse in the industry. But at what cost? Claire had been by his side through it all, supporting him, cheering him on, and believing in his potential. Blake loved her deeply, but the weight of this decision was starting to take a toll on him. As the days passed, Blake became increasingly distant, his mind consumed with the potential changes. He spent more time in meetings, on calls, and buried in documents, trying to figure out how he could make this new role work while keeping his promises to Claire. Meanwhile, Claire began to feel the familiar tug of uncertainty. She could sense that something was wrong. Blake was no longer the attentive, present partner she had come to rely on. She tried to be understanding, knowing that he was facing a difficult decision, but she couldn't ignore the growing distance between them. One night, after a particularly long day at work, Claire decided to confront him. She couldn't keep waiting for him to open up, she needed to know where they stood. When Blake arrived home, Claire Claire was sitting on the couch, waiting for him. He looked tired, his eyes heavy from the exhaustion of juggling everything on his plate. "Blake," she said softly, her voice steady but filled with concern. "We need to talk." Blake sighed, running a hand through his hair as he sat down beside her. "I know, Claire. I've been meaning to talk to you about everything." She looked at him, her heart aching. "I can see you're struggling, Blake. I've noticed the change in you, and I'm starting to feel like I'm losing you again. I know this new opportunity is important to you, but I can't be in a relationship where I'm just waiting for you to show up when it's convenient. I need more." Blake's heart sank as he listened to her words. He had been avoiding this conversation, not wanting to face the reality that his ambitions were starting to pull him away from the person he loved most. "I'm sorry, Claire," he said, his voice filled with regret. "You're right. I've been so focused on this opportunity that I've been neglecting you, and that's not fair. I've been trying to figure out how to balance everything, but it's been hard." Claire's eyes softened as she reached for his hand. "Blake, I don't want to compete with your work. I want to be part of your life, not something you fit in when you can. I want to support you, but I need to feel like I'm not constantly second to your career." Blake took a deep breath, guilt washing over him. "I never wanted you to feel that way, Claire. I've just been so focused on making sure everything is right for our future, but I can't do that without you. You're the most important part of that future." Claire squeezed his hand. "I know you're doing this for us, but we need to be on the same page. I can't wait for you to realize what's happening when it's already too late. I need you here, now, with me." Blake's eyes were filled with emotion as he looked at her. "I don't want to lose you, Claire. I've realized that this opportunity isn't worth it if it means losing the person I love. I've been thinking about it, and I know that I need to make some changes. I can't let work consume me again. We'll figure this out together." Claire nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She had always known that Blake loved her, but hearing him say it, hearing him acknowledge what he needed to change, made her believe that they could get through anything. "I'm willing to fight for us, Blake," she said softly. "But we both need to make sure that we don't lose sight of what really matters. We can't keep putting off what we both need." Blake smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reassured Claire. "I promise you, Claire, I will never take you for granted again. I'll make the changes, and I'll prioritize us." They spent the rest of the evening talking, not just about their careers and the challenges they faced but also about their dreams, their hopes for the future, and how they could continue to grow together. They realized that while life would always have its challenges, they were committed to facing them side by side, as a team. The following weeks brought a renewed sense of hope to their relationship. Blake began to take more time off, ensuring that he was present for Claire, attending dinners, and even planning weekend getaways to remind themselves why they had fallen in love in the first place. Claire, too, made sure to communicate her feelings more openly, ensuring that they remained aligned and supported each other every step of the way. Though their journey wasn't without its challenges, Claire and Blake knew that as long as they had each other, they could weather anything. Together, they would continue to build the future they had always dreamed of, one step at a time. As time went on, Claire and Blake found their rhythm once again. The challenges they faced seemed less daunting because they now understood how to face them together. Blake's business had continued to grow, but so had his commitment to Claire. Their relationship, tested by time and pressure, had evolved into something more resilient, more grounded. They had built a foundation based on love, respect, and open communication, and now, they were ready to take the next big step. After their conversation about the future, Blake knew that his career, no matter how important, could not be at the center of his life at the cost of his happiness and the woman he loved. He realized that success was not measured by the size of his company or the number of deals he closed, but by the people he surrounded himself with, especially Claire. He began to take even more time away from the office, not just to relax but to truly invest in the relationship that had become the center of his world. Their weekends were spent exploring new places, discovering hidden gems in the city, and traveling to quiet corners of the country. Each new experience only strengthened their bond, giving them memories that they would carry with them for years to come. One weekend, as they sat on a quiet beach, watching the waves roll in under the setting sun, Blake turned to Claire with a smile that made her heart skip a beat. "I know I've said this before, but I want to say it again. I love you, Claire. I've never been more certain about anything in my life. You're everything to me." Claire's eyes filled with emotion as she reached for his hand, her heart swelling at his words. "I love you too, Blake," she replied, her voice steady but filled with deep affection. "And I'm so grateful for the journey we've had. It hasn't always been easy, but every moment with you has been worth it." They sat in silence for a moment, letting the peaceful sounds of the ocean fill the space between them. In that quiet, with the warm glow of the sunset on their faces, they knew that their relationship was no longer just about overcoming obstacles. It was about building a future, a life that they both wanted to share, no matter where it would take them. Claire knew that their love wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was rooted in mutual support, understanding, and the willingness to grow together. They had their differences, their fears, and their doubts, but together, they had learned how to face them, how to work through them. Blake, who once believed his worth was tied to his success in business, now understood that true success meant having the person you loved by your side, building something meaningful with them. They had talked about their future before, but this time felt different. As they walked along the beach, the conversation turned serious. "Claire," Blake said, his voice full of intention, "I want us to take the next step. I want to build a life with you, not just a career." "I'm ready." "Are you?" Claire stopped walking, turning to face him. Her heart raced with excitement and anticipation. This was it. The moment they had been building toward. She had known for some time that this was the path she wanted to take, but hearing Blake's words made everything feel more real. "Yes," she said, a smile spreading across her face. "Yes, I'm ready. I want to be with you, Blake. I want to build a future with you." Blake's face lit up with a joy that was impossible to miss. He stepped forward and took her hands in his grip warm and reassuring. "Then let's do it," he said, his voice full of love and certainty. "Let's take on the world together." As they stood there, hand in hand, with the ocean breeze gently blowing through their hair, Claire felt a sense of peace and happiness that she had never known before. The journey hadn't been easy, and there were still challenges ahead, but now, with Blake by her side, she was confident that they could face anything. The future stretched before them, bright and full of possibilities, and together, they would navigate it, hand in hand, heart in heart. Their love had been tested, but it had only grown stronger. And now, they were ready for whatever came next, ready to embrace the life they would build together. With each new day, their bond would only grow deeper, and Claire knew, with all her heart, that this was just the beginning of a beautiful, shared future.